Hey y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and this is an episode of How I Would Have Booked. Now, on How I Would Have Booked, we take something historical and we see how I would have done it differently if I was in charge. This one is an event that never actually happened, but it was rumored to. And that's WCW's Big Bang from May 6, 2001. This was going to be the relaunch if Eric Bischoff and his company were able to buy WCW instead of Vince McMahon. They were going to shut it down for a couple months and come back with a brand new, basically, reboot of WCW. But alas, that did not happen. We're going to go back in time. We're going to say instead of them going with Eric Bischoff, the company says, we're still going to buy WCW, but we're going to put George Coles in charge. So here's how this is probably going to be a little bit longer than these normally are. This is the roster I'm going to assemble for WCW, and then I'm going to book the first pay-per-view, which would be Big Bang, which would be my coming out. Now I have a little bit of a cheat sheet because, as you can see by the sheet, there's tons of names on here, and I don't want to forget anything that I put down. With that all being said, let's go right into it. We're going to start off with who I would hire for the commentary teams. Now, remind you that both WCW and ECW ended around the same time, so I got talent pool from both of them as well as American Indies, so I could pull anybody pretty much from anywhere. First team, my A commentary team is going to be Joey Styles and Don Callis, aka the Jackal, or Cyrus from ECW. Either way, you know him. I just like these two as a team. I think it would have gave a fresh perspective, especially when you see when I get to the roster how familiar they are with a lot of the people on the roster. I think it would have been a good squad to have as your A team. They were ECW's A team for a while, so why not? My B team would be Mike Tenay and Joel Gertner. Bringing another ECW guy over, however, teaming him up with teaming him up with Mike Tenay. Tenay, I think, is an awesome announcer. I enjoyed him, but I always thought he was best when paired with somebody that was over the top, like Taz was, like Don West was in TNA. So Joel Gertner's that guy. He's way over the top. For my ring announcer, I keep David Penzer. Nothing wrong with him. I enjoyed his work. My backstage interviewer, can't go wrong with keeping Mean Gene Okerlund. I mean, who wouldn't want him there? Now, as far as some of my stuff here, I keep as my managerial squad, and we'll talk about who they're going to manage later. Father James Mitchell, a.k.a. the Sinister Minister. Don Callis, who's going to pull double duty. And yes, I'm going to call him Don Callis because I think that's actually better than the Jackal or Cyrus. I like that. I like his actual real name better. So that's what I'm going to use. It's my company. That's what I'm going with. Next up, we have Stacy Keebler. Why would we ever let her off of the contract? I'd keep her. Francine. And he's going to be an agent / manager, which a couple of these people are going to pull double duty, as you see with Don Callis. When Don Callis is managing his wrestler, he's going to step away from the booth, and either Joel Gertner is going to fill in for him, or a guest will. See? Got to think ahead a little bit. Kind of like Bobby the Brain Heenan used to do in the day. Arn Anderson, we're going to use him as an agent / manager. And he's a manager for a very specific person, so it'll make sense when we get to it. Now, I broke these into 3 divisions: cruiserweights, mid-card, and main event. That doesn't mean it's not fluid. It doesn't mean that the cruiserweights aren't going to be in the mid-card or even in the main event, and vice versa if they fit. Like, obviously, you're not going to put a giant guy in the cruiserweight division, but some of the guys I have in the other divisions may bounce back and forth. But basically, I broke them down like this because it was easier to do. I looked at the 2 rosters, WCW, ECW at the time, and what we had on the indie scene. And to be honest, ECW to me had the strongest talent pool. So The roster I have is very ECW friendly. That doesn't mean we're going to go a hardcore route. It just means that I like the guys there. Now you got to remember there were a lot of people under contract to Time Warner, so I'm gonna handcuff myself similarly to what WWE was handcuffed. There was a lot of guys that WWE couldn't get in to come for the invasion angle, which is why it didn't go off as well as it should have. So I'm going to limit myself to those people. Matter of fact, I only have one person that wasn't in the invasion angle that I was able to talk into joining my roster that Vince couldn't. And we'll get to him in a minute. But here's what we have. First off, for my Cruiserweight division, I have Shane Helms, Chavo Guerrero, Shannon Moore, Jimmy Yang, Jamie Noble, Elix Skipper, Billy Kidman, AJ Styles, Little Guido, Tajiri, Super Crazy, Jerry Lynn, and here's some guys that I brought in that are going to be new. Christopher Daniels, who was already starting to work in ECW, had been in WCW a bit. And then 3 guys that I'm going to get from the Texas Wrestling Academy who are just barely breaking into the business. Bryan Danielson, Spanky, and Paul London. Now, you could say I'm looking back at that with rose-tinted glasses to add these 4 guys who would go on to be stars. You know, Danielson, of course, being Daniel Bryan being one of the biggest stars in wrestling. But even at the time, I remember reading about these guys, and Spanky and Paul London were the guys that were the standouts, Spanky being Brian Kendrick, of course, and Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon, was being talked of. What I want to do is I was going to do kind of what Ring of Honor did and ECW was going to do before they went out of business, and that's foster a relationship with the Texas Wrestling Academy and Shawn Michaels and see if we could get, a pipeline, basically a developmental to bring some of these guys in. Next up, we have our wild card division, mid-card division. I don't know why I said wild card. Lance Storm, Mark Jindrak, Chuck Palumbo, Sean O'Hare, Mike Awesome, Canyon, Justin Credible, Buff Bagwell, C.W. Anderson, The Sandman, New Jack, Simon Diamond, Tommy Dreamer, Masato Tanaka, Mikey Whipwreck, and Sabu. As you can see, we're starting to pull more of the ECW guys in. Again, a lot of it is for name value. A lot of the people with name value I wouldn't have been able to get. So I do have to fill out the card with people that wrestling fans know. Tommy Dreamer, Sandman, Sabu, they're all well-known names in the wrestling business. So let's bring them in, help fill out the roster, help fit in some spots. Now our main event scene, and like I said, this is all fluid. This isn't going to be set in stone. But this is basically where we're starting at. I have Raven, Booker T, Steve Corino, Diamond Dallas Page, Jeff Jarrett, Bam Bam Bigelow, Shane Douglas, Rob Van Dam, Rhino, and the guy that I was talking about, the one that I was able to talk into staying and give a contract, is Goldberg. Rumors are Goldberg didn't go to WWE because he was afraid of how they would handle him. I believe if it's still WCW and it's someone maybe I can build his trust, I don't know if I would be able to. But for the sake of this, I'm going to say I did get his trust, and I paid him and I was able to keep him. But I consider that a big coup at the time, having a guy like Goldberg. While not one of my favorite wrestlers, he's one of the most marketable and bankable wrestlers in the history of wrestling. So why would you not want him on your roster? And of course, starting a new company named WCW, you want one of the guys that's synonymous with WCW. That being said, I'm going to put my champions, and I'm limited it. I have 5 championship belts I'm going to go with. And I'm going to keep the champions who they were leaving WCW. So if you were a champion on the last Nitro, you're still a champion. My world champion is going to be Booker T. My U.S. champion's also Booker T, who I'm going to have vacate the title. We're going to announce that on the pay-per-view because I don't want to have one guy being two champions. My Cruiserweight champion is going to be Shane Helms. My tag team champions are Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare. And last but not least, due to the influx of ECW talent, I'm going to reintroduce the Hardcore title. It was retired roughly a month or a couple weeks before WCW went out of business, basically because their Hardcore champion Meng went back to WWE and became Haku again, and he took the title with him. So I'm going to reintroduce it here at the pay-per-view. Again, we're going to give it, it's going to be something for a lot of these ECW guys to do. A lot of the big card guys to go for. It's something I want to keep in. I want to keep the hardcore element for a little while. Eventually, if we go 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the future, we're going to want to work away from the hardcore element. But we're still talking 2001 where it's still kind of fresh. It still hasn't been beat to death. It hasn't had the 8 million copycat ECWs yet. So, while it's still fresh, I'm still going to use it. Now, I'm going to set up my factions and tag teams as such. We're going to have the Natural Born Thrillers, who I trimmed down with the guys I kept. It'll be Palumbo, O'Hare, and Jindrak. We have the new Triple Threat, which if you watch ECW was always Shane Douglas's faction. Shane Douglas, Simon Diamond, and Bam Bam Bigelow, who would have been a part of the Triple Threat in the past, with their manager, Francine. My other faction is going to be the Unholy Alliance, which is going to be a team. It was a tag team in ECW, but we're going to expand it to a whole faction here. I mean, the ECW tag team. And that's Tajiri, Mikey Whipwreck, Canyon, and Raven, all managed by Father James Mitchell. And then I have some other tag teams that I'm going to put in. Basically, we're going to have mixed match tag teams through these guys, but we have a couple dedicated teams like Rob Van Dam and Sabu, the Impact players of Just Incredible and Lance Storm, who I'm going to put back together, and I'm going to make Don Callis their manager. Now, we're going to use this as kind of like a two-man power trip. While they're both a tag team, much like Rob Van Dam and Sabu, they're both also going to be going for singles titles. So, they kind of try to take over the world, much like they did in ECW, tried to. And last but not least, we're going to put together a tag team, which I think kind of carries over from the ECW storylines. That's C.W. Anderson and Tommy Dreamer. We seen the last ECW pay-per-view where CW beats Tommy Dreamer in an I Quit match. I believe he earns his respect. Tommy Dreamer is famously healing some injuries at the time, so let's put him in a tag team for a little bit. And here's where Art Anderson comes in. Art Anderson is going to be the manager, quote, uncle, or cousin, I forget how he relates to the C.W. Anderson storyline-wise, of C.W. Anderson. So, that's where we get Art Anderson as a manager. I don't know why anybody's ever tried to tap him as such. I think he's an amazing talent and an amazing talker. So I think he would add to that. Now, coming from that, I'm going to need this in a little bit. We're going to go right into our card. And this is what I would do for the actual pay-per-view. You see how I have set it up, how the roster's set. First match of the night, I would come out with a number one contender for the Cruiserweight Championship Fatal 4-Way match. The winner of the match gets a Cruiserweight title shot later in the night. Jerry Lynn versus Shannon Moore versus Elix Skipper versus Billy Kidman. And I put it on, I give him 15, 20 minutes. I have Jerry Lynn pick up the win because Jerry Lynn's not far removed from an ECW World title run. I think it's going to add a little bit of credibility to have him in the hunt for our Cruiserweight Championship, a former World Champion. Now, as we said, I had vacated the U.S. Championship, so we're going to have a little mini tournament here. We're going to have basically a 4-man tournament, 2 round 1 selections. The winners of the 2 round 1 matches go on to face each other, and the winner of that match will be the U.S. champion going forward. The first match I have Shane Douglas versus Diamond Dallas Page. I'm going to have Shane Douglas pick up the win. I think, we could argue back and forth here. I like DDP a lot. And I tried to when I put this together, remembering that I had to use a lot of ECW guys to fill out the roster, I kind of want to put the ECW guys on equal footing with the WCW guys, at least to the eyes of the WCW fans. And what better way to do this than to have one of ECW's big stars, Shane Douglas, beat one of WCW's big stars in DDP. Now, the second of the first round U.S. title matches, I have Jeff Jarrett versus Rob Van Dam. And on this one, I kind of in my head went back and forth for a bit. Do I want to do Jarrett versus Douglas, heel versus heel match? It really wasn't done much at the time. It's still not at this time. So I gave the match to RVD. To me, again, you build these guys, plus RVD at the time had one of the biggest buzzes in wrestling. He was going to be one of the next big stars. So we're setting up for the U.S. title championship later. Rob Van Dam versus Shane Douglas. Now the next match is for the vacant hardcore championship, and that's why we still had to keep this. I'm going to do a little bit something crazy here, and I'm going to put it in a traditional Battle Royal match. The winner of the Battle Royal becomes the new hardcore champion. Now, the participants I have for this is Jimmy Yang, Little Guido, Chavo Guerrero, Mark Jindrak, Mike Awesome, Canyon, C.W. Anderson, Sandman, New Jack, Tommy Dreamer, Masato Tanaka, Tajiri, Mikey Whipwreck, Sabu, Steve Corino, Bam Bam Bigelow, Raven, and Rhino. Now, I come down to the end of the match, and I have Mike Awesome is out there with Chavo Guerrero, and they're the two last guys left. Obviously, a big man versus little man. Looks like Mike Awesome's going to pick up the win when his perpetual enemy, Masato Tanaka, comes in, hits him in the back with a chair, helps Chavo put him over the ropes. Chavo Guerrero wins in a shocker. A guy that you don't think of as a hardcore champion becomes the hardcore champion going forward. Again, I think Chavo, to me, was a guy that was never used to his full potential, and I'd like to see more out of him. I would like to see what he would do here. I think it's kind of an interesting concept. I kind of see him as a guy using the hardcore rules to his advantage, all at the same time finding a way to weasel out of losing matches. So basically, I think this fits him perfectly. And I'd like to see him go forward. And again, it's a little bit of a surprise because, of course, you're going to expect one of the ECW guys to win the hardcore title. But I throw you a curveball, which you got to do every now and then. Coming off of that, we see Buff Bagwell storm to the ring with no music. The announcers play it up, say, "I don't know why Buff's here. He's not on the pay sheet. He's not on the format." Buff Bagwell gets in the middle of the ring, starts saying, "This is a new era of WCW. This is WCW. This is World Championship Wrestling. This is where the big boys play. I've been here for almost a decade, and now we're going to influx this garbage, these bingo hall wrestlers, these ECW rejects from a company that couldn't stay in business 2 months ago, 5 months ago. We're going to put this crap on our show. It's only going to run us down again." I hate these ECW guys. I'm tired of them. They're taking our spots. This is WCW. This isn't ECW. I'm going to lay a challenge out to all you garbage ECW wrestlers, because you can't wrestle, you rely on garbage. Any one of you guys want to come out here now and give us an actual wrestling match, not an ECW match, a wrestling match like WCW is known for. I challenge any of you to come out now. Of course, we get the flag bearer of ECW. Tommy Dreamer comes out, answers the challenge. We get an impromptu match. pitting Buff Bagwell versus Tommy Dreamer. Tommy Dreamer gets the upper hand in the wrestling match. As we've seen in history, Buff Bagwell rolls to the outside of the ring, kind of walks off, waving off the match. Dreamer wins by countout. Kind of gives us a direction for a guy like Buff Bagwell. He's going to be the anti-hardcore guy going forward. Keeps us a happy moment. Everybody loves Tommy Dreamer, so of course you're going to love him winning this. And of course you're going to see where there's going to be a split going forward. And of course there's a natural split between the WCW guys and the ECW guys, which will keep going forward, and we'll use that for the months and build up to the next events. Now, coming from that, we're going to go into our U.S. Championship Finals. Shane Douglas versus Rob Van Dam. I'm giving the win to Shane Douglas with help from the newly reformed on this night triple threat of Bam Bam Bigelow and Simon Diamond coming out to help him. Douglas picks up the win. Rob Van Dam doesn't look weak because he had to cheat to do so. We got Shane as the U.S. champion going forward. Van Dam looking for redemption, so there's a story to go on by itself. All in all, in my opinion, keeps it going. And it's another thing where we can play up coming after this pay-per-view how Shane Douglas never gave Rob Van Dam an ECW championship shot all those years at ECW. Like I said, we're going to play this feud up going out of the pay-per-view if Van Dam's getting screwed. Last but not least, we're going to have our world title match, the match that I sell this card with, Booker T versus Goldberg. And I'm going to do this as a traditional face versus face match. I'm not going to put any gimmicks in, I'm not going to put any swerves in. I'm just going to have your Booker T versus Goldberg, one-on-one, the better man wins. I'm going to give them about 10 minutes of the match because I believe Booker and Goldberg could put on a good match in that time frame. I'm going to give Booker T a surprise win. At the end of the match, they hold each other's hands up high. They hug and embrace. A lot of the guys come out from the back, hold Booker T up over their shoulders. We see at the end of the pay-per-view, Booker standing tall in the ring. Goldberg shakes his hand. They walk off. Boom. That's the end of the Big Bang. So we've started it over again. We brought in new champions. We brought in an influx of new talent. We got new divisions. Well, not new divisions, but revamped divisions. We got new announcers. Some of what made ECW so revolutionary is coming over. Some of what made WCW so popular is still there. So we're going to mix this all up in a big melting pot, starting with the Big Bang, blow everything up, and then we're going to go forward from there. And that's how I would have booked and set up for the Big Bang if I was in charge of the reboot of WCW that never actually happened. Let me know what you think. Do you think I went too heavy on the ECW guys? Do you think I maybe booked this wrong? Who would you have booked better or differently? Do you like the direction I made? Hit me up in the comments, let me know. Make sure to hit like and share, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the page. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this is another episode of How I Would Have Booked.